it'd be kind of lame to have clinched it on an off night. It just, no one's out or anything or even watching it. So, but yeah, you definitely wanted to clinch it at home. They had the opportunity. Yeah, Minnesota's a good team, but you're at full strength. They didn't have Karl Anthony Towns. It was the second night of a back-to-back for them, and you still lose to them. Yeah, Minnesota's hungry. They're trying to, they're in the 6th spot now, but still kind of on that cusp of the play-in and whatnot. So, but still, they should have won that game. They should have been a lot more amped up to win it as well.
Kind of moving on to that game was the unfortunate matchup against a long team that, like we were talking about last week, was just able to keep the Kings out of their groove the way they like to play, which is picking up the pace off of stops, and they just couldn't get stops. Outside of the second quarter, they could not run the fast break and get out and push the ball. And you're talking about a situation where was a task at hand, and the Kings failed to bring the necessary physicality and activity on defense to play the way that they want to play. And they allowed the length of Minnesota to disrupt them. And worse, they allowed Minnesota to get off to a really good start and allowed like their 4th scorer in Jaden McDaniels to get really comfortable. Is that something that kind of makes you think will instill in them something to learn from this? Of course, there's always a way to learn from any game, whether it's a win or a loss. Or are you looking at that game and feeling seriously concerned about what's going to happen in the playoffs? And especially knowing that as it stands now, I think if the playoffs started right this very instant as of us recording, the Kings would play the Timberwolves in the first round.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, it was a playoff crowd for sure. I don't know if you'd really call it a playoff atmosphere, like fully, just because I wouldn't say it was like a must-win game. Like, yeah, it would have been super nice to do it in front of your fans and stuff, but I'm not concerned in that sense where they like couldn't handle a playoff atmosphere. I mean, I feel like we've had more playoff atmosphere games, like that Clippers game where they scored 100 and whatever points, right? But I mean, it is an interesting point that that game was against Minnesota, because at this point, yeah, they would play Minnesota, and even without Karl Anthony Towns, they lost, and Minnesota's kind of given the Kings problems all season long. I think they went 1-3 against them this year in the season series. So Minnesota clearly matches up with them well. I think we had this question last week, and I don't even think we said Minnesota, but you asked like what Western Conference teams would give the Kings trouble, and Minnesota's right there. They have that length, and that was kind of one of the factors we were saying last week that the Kings have trouble with. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping we don't play Minnesota in the first round. Minnesota is kind of on the cusp. They could be the 6th seed. Maybe they won't. It's so tight at the bottom of the Western Conference standings for the playoffs. Anything can happen, really. But as of right now, they would pose a problem in the postseason. Yeah, I mean, it sucked losing to them on Monday night and 3 times in the regular season. I think it will be a little different in the playoffs. I think the Kings will play a little harder, even with Monday's, playoff atmosphere in the Golden One Center, if you even want to call it that. I guess we'll just see. We'll see come the playoffs.
Yeah,
they will be tough though. They're a good team.
I mean, to be fair to our conversation last week, I think we did mention Minnesota, but I also think we mentioned like 11 or 12 teams in the Western Conference.
So yeah, the Trailblazers.
Houston, but yeah, I think we probably mentioned every team except Houston, Portland, and San Antonio.
Yeah,
it wasn't the most focused conversation, but we did mention Minnesota.
Yes, you're right.
But